Hello, welcome to chapter 1 of Diary of an Alchemist. I'm Carissa, I explain it all, and in this series, what I'm explaining is my shadow work, emotional healing journey, inner child journey, all those good things, just really coming into myself and who I am and what I want and moving forward in that direction in life. This all happened after I went through a major burnout at my job, working way too much and having absolutely no boundaries. I did an intro video, so if you're wondering what this whole series is about, you can go watch that one. And all my disclaimers and all that good stuff is in there. But essentially, chapter 1 picks up towards the end of that summer. I've written a few notes here to keep me on track of like certain bullet points of what happened, like the big stuff, the stuff that's important to tell in the timeline of events in my story. So that summer, late in that summer, I was listening to Impact Theory as I had been for the last year or so before that. But there was a particular guest, Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I'd never heard of before, and he came on and just gave this, like, to me, it was mind-blowing talk about emotions and feelings and vibrations, and I had just never looked at the world in that way before. So the particular thing that he said in this episode that really got me was that an emotion only lasts 90 seconds in the body. And I was like, excuse me, because I was very, very moody back then. I still can be, I think. But like, I just being moody, being contemplative, being brooding over things. Like, it just, like, what do you mean an emotion only lasts 90 seconds? Like a minute and a half? Like, no, it doesn't. And he talked about how an emotion, the energy that moves through us, can get trapped in our body, in our energetic field, because of the thoughts and feelings that we continue to assign to that, like that come up in triggered response to that original emotion. And so really we just kind of become a like an echo chamber, echoing back that emotion within us, and if we let it stay, then it turns into other things. So I made this poster because I had to have this visual up on my wall to like really let this sink in. I had to understand the world in this different way because it was just, it meant so many things about myself and like who I am and how I operated in the world. So I made this poster back then about an emotion, feeling, moods, temperaments, and personalities. And I'll kind of go through it real quick because I think it's so important. But emotions are a physical response that's hardwired and universal. It's a response to change in an environment, people, chance, or self. A feeling is then, after that 90 seconds, a feeling is mental associations and reactions based on memory, expectations, and beliefs, and set off by the initial emotion. When we kind of let the feelings and emotions last because we keep thinking about them and bringing up old associations and beliefs that we had in response to that emotion, when we let that last more than, say a few hours or a few days, it starts to become a mood. So you get moody because you're like in this echo chamber, like cloud, if you will, of the emotion, the original emotion and feeling that you were feeling. And when we let that mood last more than a few days, turns into a few weeks or months, that turns into what's called a temperament. A temperament is just kind of, if someone is like, hey, that person's moody, and it doesn't seem like they went through anything recently that would create that moodiness, like think of like teenagers, right? When they're moody all the time, that's kind of a temperament. It's not really a personality, but it's not quite a mood either. Like they've been in this mood for months, so it's kind of their temperament right now. And then the crazy thing that just like blew my mind is that temperaments lasting for years turn into personalities. And the only thing I had done in regards to emotions and psychological processes and stuff at this point was the Myers-Briggs personality test. And basically, like, I had learned that about different types of personalities, and it helped me navigate how people could think and act differently than me and still be right. And I'm still right, and it's okay. We don't invalidate each other. But learning that it was actually emotions and feelings lasting for years turned into this kind of like personality type, that like identity that we carry around, was just like, oh my God. Now, I think that there's a little bit more to that, to personality, than just that. But like the idea that energy could stay within our body, our psyche, our thoughts and feelings long enough to then start becoming moods and temperaments and like aspects of our personality was like, whoa. And Dr. Joe Dispenza talked about how like you can unravel this, undo this by uncovering what beliefs that you have in regards to that emotion or feeling that came up. And by unraveling it, understanding it, you can release those feelings that have essentially been trapped within your energetic field for maybe years, you know? This was just like, no way. Like, I had never thought of the world in this way before. So this was very, very, um, like shifting, like a key point of a shift. Like I talked in one of my earlier videos, in the burnout series about like there's key points in your journey, in your life's journey, where had you not made that choice, had you not come across that thing, your life would be very different. This is one of those kind of like portal, like choice points, like save points or something, I feel like, in the game of my life, right? So learning all that, then I was like super curious about emotions and feelings. So then I went into a deep, deep, deep dive, a rabbit hole of understanding emotions and feelings. And I will post pictures here because I have tons of notes. I like to work with my whiteboards, my sticky notes, and that way I can move ideas around and like play with things. And yeah, so like I assembled all these different notes, and I had put all these sticky notes on my closet doors, in like an X and Y axis grid, like understand emotions and feelings, and the masculine and feminine aspects, the disempowered and empowered versions of those, just so many things, and just looked up the definition of every single different emotion there was. I just super deep dived and I loved it. I love talking about emotions and energy in this way. And so I think one of the series that I want to do after I tell my story, Diary of an Alchemist, I would love to do one on emotions and feelings and understanding those, because you understand yourself so much better. What I didn't realize back then is that emotions are the language of our intuition, of our higher self. If you want to understand what your true will, your true purpose, spiritual esoteric terms that are just so bandied about so carelessly now. But if you want to understand all those things, you have to understand what your emotions are trying to tell you. They are the language of your soul. So if you just disregard it, as I had all the way up until this point in my life, and just suppress it and deny it and just say, intellectualize everything and just say, wow, I'm feeling really angry right now, it's because of, and then like look at the external events and be like, well, I'm angry because of this and this and that, and not really validating the emotion of anger itself, and that it is part of you that needs healing, that feels wounded, that a boundary has been crossed, it's time to do something about it, to protect yourself, to feel present with yourself. There's so much that needs to go on with that feeling, rather than just intellectualizing the situation and that, oh, I just happen to be feeling angry and here's what I'm going to do about the situation. So like this was the preamble's not the right word, but like this is the forerunner. I don't know. I'm like, I can't get the word right now, but like this is the precursor, maybe that's it. Precursor to that emotional healing journey. I was starting to get interested in the intricacies of the language of emotion and feeling. So sometime around this time, this is probably like September, October, November of 2019. I'm deep diving into emotions, feelings, sorting it all out, researching, thinking, planning, philosophizing, whatever. And I come across, I start to get interested in energy, and so I'm researching, and I find this woman named Teal Swan, who is a very, she's very well known in the spiritual and emotional healing communities, and she's got a huge channel. I think she has, she probably has like 1,000 videos by this point. And she herself is a little bit of a controversial figure. I have my thoughts about that, but for the time being of my diary and like not getting into that as a tangent, her work has been greatly influential on helping me understand myself and really stepping into my own sense of empowerment. And so I'm just so grateful for her work in doing that. But the first video I found of hers was about the chakras, about different the different energy portals, I don't know, within us, and like the flavors of that energy, I guess. And so I started to kind of play with those ideas, and this was so woo-woo. This is so like not okay, because I grew up in a super rational, logical, intellectualizing household. Like you just don't, like, emotions are not valid or valuable. They get in the way. They kind of like a like Tuvok or Spock, like the Vulcans in Star Trek. Like they just get in the way. They're messy. But like it's just crazy, because it's like without them you don't know which way to go. Like you're gonna go with whatever is in your physical existence is the best way, rather than knowing deeply like what your path is through the physical existence. Yeah, it's just crazy. So I started, I was, let's see here, May, so June, July, August, September, October, November. So probably November is when I went back to work. I needed money. We'd been living off savings. I didn't realize how good we'd had it, like how much we had actually saved up, and that I could actually live off savings for that long. But we were coming to a point where I was like, I should probably go back. But I also kind of felt like going back. I felt like going back to the community of coworkers that I had, the connection there. I felt like being productive again, like not out of a sense of I should be productive, but like I desire to do productive thing, like to put work out into the world and feel good after having done something. um Even though I was doing like all my research and stuff, but it was so internal, and I wasn't like connected to the outside world, and I wanted to be. So I chose to go back to work. I was no longer the boss, but I had like been the boss of everyone that was there, and so it was kind of like a unusual dynamic where I didn't have to be. I felt like I was in control, but I didn't have to actually be in control, and I wasn't responsible for anything. So I actually got to feel like what it was like to feel free or kind of play in the workplace. Like I'm still doing work, but I could have ease about it. I didn't have to stress over every little thing. I wasn't responsible for everyone and everything. I could just show up and be. And that was a very new type of experience of me in relation with work, and was very healing in and of itself. So briefly, well, it's probably not going to be brief, but briefly, I'm going to list out the 4 main things that I did or perspectives I had to shift and change and embrace in order to perceive the world in a way that made me capable and able to do the soul alchemy, the shadow work, inner child work, reparenting, all that good stuff. What was interesting about going back to work this time, while I had just started learning about emotions and feelings, was that I had also just started to learn about law of attraction. Now, oh my god, there's so much that goes into law of attraction, and there's so many ways that it's taught that it's not helpful. There are truths out there, but sometimes they're just spiritual truths and don't really like mix with the physical plane of truth. There's so many intricacies to it. I will absolutely do other videos on it. We're not going to get too in depth in it, but to explain my experience in the workplace, like we have to like I have to paint a picture of like how I was coming to understand and view and perceive it all, because it was very different than anything I'd ever done before, and it was the setup really to the next 6 years of emotional healing and all that. So real quick, we're going to get a little bit theory, and the person I learned law of attraction from was Teal Swan. So not from a manifesting point of view. I really did not get into manifesting until probably like 2022, 23. So back in 2019, I wasn't into law of attraction for manifesting. I was in law of attraction. I was into into perceiving everything through the lens of law of attraction in order to better understand myself, in order to purify. That has so many like religious connotations to it, and that's not what I mean, but to take base metal and turn it to gold, to do soul alchemy, to release what doesn't serve me, and embrace what is empowering. And so that's the way that I was using law of attraction, was more of the way that Teal Swan kind of teaches it, as a mirror. And so I wouldn't even call it law of attraction at that point. That was not really like my vocabulary. It was more of like the law of mirroring, with like a mirror, like you see yourself in a mirror, you're reflected in a mirror. That's the way Teal Swan teaches it, and that's kind of what I was using it for. Was everything is a mirror reflection of me, and if everything is energy, because all this matter, all this physical stuff behind me, it is energy and particles just vibrating really slow in a very dense way. We see it as matter, as physical matter. But if we understand at a root level that everything is just energy in vibration, in motion, then like the kind of like root cause of emotion and feeling is energy moving through us. And so if we can understand the entire world around us, even though it looks kind of physical, even though it does look physical and human beings look physical, what if we saw them as mixtures of energy, just as we are a mixture of energy? And what whenever I get triggered by someone or something that's happened, what if I saw it as what energy is going on here in this interaction within this person that is triggering a not so nice feeling within me, a negative feeling. Negative does not mean bad, but rather it's just the vibrational set point that it is. It's below neutral. It is negative. It doesn't feel good within us. So what does that indicate about me? That's how I was using law of attraction. I don't know if I'll call it law of attraction. I feel like law of mirroring is just really going to more emphasize what I used it for, because I didn't use it for manifestation at that time. To get a little bit into that theory of the law of mirroring, then I really need to do like a separate video about it and not get super deep into it here. But for the sake of the stories that I'm about to tell, the idea behind learning and understanding yourself through understanding the mirror that is the world is when we were born, when we were little babies, we are wholly ourselves, our whole self, our highest self, our authentic self. We are just a baby, pure consciousness, whatever. As we come into the world and as we come up against things that say, this is okay behavior, this is not okay behavior, it is not okay to feel this way, it's okay to feel this way, it's not okay to be this, it's okay to be that. We start to fragment the aspect of ourselves that is authentically the things that we shouldn't be, shouldn't want, shouldn't feel, shouldn't behave. Those things that are authentically those, we cannot stop being those, we are those, gets pushed to the side and said that's bad, put in the bad box. And the part of us that's good is okay, is praised, is valued, it's appreciated. And so for a young little being in this world who has to rely on caregivers, has to make them happy because that's how they get their needs met, of course we're going to do the things that are good, that get us the praise, the appreciation, the connectedness, so that we can get our needs met. And of course we're not going to be those things that they're telling us are bad. They must be bad, right? Like, we're going to trust the authority in this situation. Like, that must not be okay for me. And so for a little being, for anyone, like any adult or whatever, like, but any little being who just, like, they're just figuring out how to like walk in the world, it's way too much cognitive dissonance to hold on to both what is good and what is bad about us. And so in order to create a whole sense of self and identity that can move forward without having to deal with all the feelings that come with, like, it's not okay to be like this, it's you're bad if you feel like this, in order to not deal with all that stuff kind of has to be pushed down out of our conscious mind, and it gets relegated to the subconscious. So all these things are still true about us, all these beliefs that it's not okay, all those things are kind of like the trapdoor, I guess, that shuts down on the subconscious to keep a lid on it all, so that we don't delve into what is not okay, right? Like, we need to still be the stuff that's okay. So all that gets pushed down to the subconscious, and all we're left with, all that we're conscious of, all that our ego, this is the ego that forms, is the identity. There's nothing wrong with the ego either, but the ego is the sense of identity that we are consciously identified with, that part of us that moves forward in the world that is okay and acceptable, and learned all those behaviors like people pleasing and how to be a good person and whatever has been put on us. That is the ego, that is the self that is okay and acceptable to move forward in the world. But don't forget, you still have all that stuff in the basement, in the subconscious. And so shadow work, the beauty of shadow work is that we turn the conscious light of our mind into the dark shadows of what's in the subconscious and become aware of, illuminate that which is in the shadows, and learn to we learn to how to heal those feelings around feeling cut off from those parts of ourselves, around feeling guilty, ashamed, embarrassed. We learn to heal those things by sitting with it, by releasing the shame and burden around it, and then actually being present with those parts of ourselves that were termed bad or not good or not acceptable or whatever. And so we then reclaim those and say, I am those things. I am okay with those. And I am going to practice being okay in my nervous system, in myself, in my life, in the way that I speak, in the way that I be, with those things, with those aspects as a fully joined part of me. And I'm going to deal with the consequences of people maybe not thinking those things are okay about me. that's okay, because I choose a life of authenticity, one that's in alignment with myself at all times, and I will deal with those relationships. And if I want to keep those, then I will learn the vocabulary and ways to relate to someone else and communicate my needs and what I need. And if they're not okay with it, that I have a boundary. That I'm going to protect my inner child, the part of myself that was relegated to the subconscious, that believes it's not okay. I'm protecting that at the cost of everything else. And if that relationship cannot make it through that, if that person's just not in a place in their life where they can accept that I am going to be those things, then that's okay, and I can release that, and I can find my people in my community who will appreciate that and who do want the whole authentic version of me. And so that is, in a nutshell, shadow work, inner child work, all that stuff. And so really the law of attraction and law of mirroring, how I was using it was every time something would be in my external environment that was triggering, that made me upset, made me frustrated, made me angry, made me disgusted. That's a really big indicator that you've got something in the subconscious, is disgust, the pushing away, the repelling, like absolutely not, I am not identified with it. If you didn't care about it at all, if there was not a part of you that cared, you just wouldn't care. You would just be like, whatever, that doesn't bother me. If it bothers you that strongly, it's because there's something there to look at. So I was learning about triggers. I was learning about the nature of being triggered. We have such a catchword in society today about being triggered, and I'm not sure like that I understand that really, because the way that I learned about that was not like a buzzword back when I was doing this work. And so being triggered meant time to look within, time to do reflection, time to be with myself. That is a sign that I'm about to grow. That's what a trigger meant to me, and still does mean to me. And yeah, we'll probably have to address triggers and all that stuff later on. But that's how I was using triggers, was like, there's something to heal and fix. Now, the dark side of shadow work, ironically, is that perfectionist behaviors and a tendency to think that we need to fix ourselves at all times, and that we're not perfect right now as we are in our imperfect way. That is a barrier to self-love, which is the whole point of shadow work. And so there's a dark side, an ironically blind spot in the shadows of shadow work, and we'll talk about that later too. But for me, at that time, I get obsessed over things. I research and I delve deep, and I want to understand everything about it, and let me just go deep. And I went deep for 6 years before realizing, I'd like finish the work, and then I kind of realized like, and you gotta love yourself the way you are right now anyways too. But at that time I was like, oh my God, let me obsess over this. Let me use everything that triggers me in life right now to like get to the heart of, to make myself better, to make myself perfect or whatever. That's not what I was thinking, but like that was the subconscious belief. Like I need to be perfect to be safe and be loved, which is why I did all the shadow work. It's just wild. So anyways, kind of getting back to the idea of we have the conscious and the subconscious, the shadows, even our conscious identities can be split and fragmented into many different pieces. I want you to think of this as kind of like an onion. Ogres are like onions. We have layers, there's like a surface layer that is totally fragmented, but we're conscious of those aspects. We know when we're getting upset in an environment. And something that was a big indicator to me was there's this personality test called Ocean, or the Big Five, and it just kind of measures your degree on a spectrum of how open you are, how conscientious, how agreeable, how extroverted or not, neurotic you are, all these things. And I was like, those don't really make sense to me, because they change depending on what environment I'm in and with who I'm with. My behaviors change, so my personality is going to change and shift from all of them. So I felt like that was not a good indicator of my actual personality, because it changed all the time. So that was an indicator to me while I was doing this work, that the top layer of my onion of self was deeply fragmented in and of itself. Like the way that I behaved was very fragmented. So I started by healing those behaviors into one like integrating the aspects of me that felt like I can't behave this way with this person because of blah blah blah, and vice versa. For all the different fragments. And so it was very surface layer. It was very rapid. It was probably like November, December, January, February, March, April, May. Probably about 6 months of deep diving into integrating the very surface layer, the top layer of integrating my personality. So I wasn't even really doing shadow work, I feel like, at that point. I was just kind of more of like helping myself like integrate into a cohesive outwardly cohesive individual. Then the deep shadow work, the subconscious stuff would like come later. But eventually what starts to happen, I remember why I brought this up. Eventually what starts to happen is you have that top layer, all those different little fragments. There's actually like bigger pieces. There's like themes, if you will, that run through your life, like a story. Like, like there's like a theme, like this block theme, there's a second block theme, and there's a third block theme. And from those three themes branched out all these different little fragments. And so as you heal that top layer of fragments, now you're getting to the bigger themes in your life. And then those actually come down to just two different themes. Usually it's like that split between inner child and adult self. And then also like that human nature versus the higher self nature, and then the masculine, the feminine. There's like these very root polarities that exist within all of us that start to then, once you integrate that, then you get to like what I call the root ball of your shadow, which is the core underlying reason of why you believe that you are disempowered in the world. And God, yeah, that's crazy. The crazy stuff. We won't get to that part of the story until the year 2023. But that's why I bring it up, is kind of like our progression through my story will be in layers, different fragments on the top layer, and then we'll go into like deeper themes that keep repeating. We'll actually see that these themes keep repeating throughout my journey. So remember those three things that I am using to indicate how my perspective was of the world and how I did this work at the time. Number one was, of course, if everything is energy, if everything is just particles and energy and vibrations and stuff, then I could then also see the world, the external world around me, as energy and mixtures of that energy. Number two was, if law of mirroring, law of attraction, law of mirroring is true, then I could see my external world as a physical reflection of the energies that I have within me, and I can actually go inside and understand what about me matches what's going on in the external environment, and what can I do to release those subconscious like tangles, blocks, obstacles, limiting beliefs, to be able to open up to understanding why that's reflecting in my external world and fix it in my internal world, and it won't show up in my external world anymore. So that was two. Number three was the process that I used for this was, knowing all that, then I would dream at night, and I would wake up and remember my dream. Now, a lot of people are like, I don't remember my dreams. I didn't either before I started this work. Remembering your dreams, I think, actually is a lot simpler and easier than people allow themselves to believe it is, because maybe you're not good at it, but have you ever tried to practice before? Like if you dream and you tell yourself the night before, I'm gonna wake up and remember my dream, then you might remember like a sliver of it, a fragment of it when you wake up. Don't do anything else. Like, don't use the bathroom, don't get up, don't look at your phone, nothing. Just get out a piece of paper and a pen, or get your notes app out on your phone and just journal what you can remember about your dream. And actually, it like kind of it's like a thread, and it pulls more out with it as you start to remember. And so then you remember more details and more details. And maybe not on the first day, but on the second or third or fourth day that you're practicing, you'll like stuff will start to come up. You will actually train your body and your mind to remember, when we wake up, we need to remember our dream. And it still slips away very quickly if you don't immediately go to write it down. So do that, and you'll get better and better at remembering more and more details. It's like anything; it just requires practice. So I would do this. I would wake up and remember my dream. I'd journal the heck out of my dream. Then I'd go look up dream symbols and just use them as a jumping off point of like, if a spider is symbolic of feminine intuition, then, and I dreamed of a spider and it was hanging above my head in this hotel room, then what is the hotel room, and use that as like the just the different energies that I was dealing with, and what's my interpretation of those events. And this is what must be going on with me emotionally, in my subconscious. Teal Swan has this idea of dreams are when we're in the dreams, we kind of lift out of the physical concreteness of reality and kind of rejoin, if you will, with the greater consciousness, collective consciousness, higher self-consciousness, God consciousness, whatever. And as we're coming back into the physical body upon waking, this energy kind of gets sucked back through our psyche, and there's these collective archetypes that are symbols, the dream symbols that we have, that it's kind of like filtering through and grabbing through those symbols and translates into the physical sight kind of version of the dream that we experience. And so when you wake up, you can reverse engineer that process and look at the symbols and interpret what's the energy behind that. What must I actually be feeling? What is like the wholeness of the situation of me right now as I am in my life? So using that, I would journal the dream. Then I would look up, I'd be like, okay, so clearly this is what I'm feeling right now. Then I'd go find a video that Teal Swan had done, because she probably had like 400 or 500 videos at this point back in 2019. She had so much work on it, and her videos were about getting to the root cause of energy behind the things that we feel and the things that we experience in life. And so I would watch her video and I'd be like, that's really interesting. Okay, well, if that's true, then I'm going to go about my day and just see how this comes up in my life. And so I would go to work, and I work in a customer service, medical / retail field. And so I would deal with, at that time I was dealing with like between, I don't know, we can say probably between 25 and 50 people per day. And I've got my coworkers, and then I've also got the customers I'm dealing with, and so many different personality types, so many different energies, so many different situations. Undoubtedly something would come up that was reflective of that energy that I was dealing with, that I was now becoming aware of. And so somehow that would come up. I would be able to, in real time, look at what is my trigger, what feeling is coming up for me, what needs to be healed. And then I go on a break, or I go on lunch, and I would journal, like, what does this scenario that happened in my external world, if that is reflecting what's going on internally, and this is the internal emotional situation that I'm dealing with, then what can I determine about myself? And so, and like, how can I change my response to that? How do I want to be, but how do I stay with this emotion, feel it, be present with it, accept myself as I want to be? How do I now want to be, and how do I want to act in this world? And then I'd go out, and the rest of the day I would act in these new ways. And in the days coming, I would have opportunities to act in this new way, to kind of merge and integrate how I want to be with how I thought I ought to be, and deal with any emotions that were like tension caused because of that tension, because I want to be this new way that integrates all of it, but I don't believe that I can, and what limiting beliefs are coming up, and just all these things, right? And if I was really, really ambitious, I'd go listen to another video while I went to the gym at night, and then I had time on the way home. I had an hour commute at that time to work and then back from work, and so I'd have an hour to just reflect, being in flow state while driving, and just kind of like piece together what's going on for me. And then I'd go home, go to sleep, dream, wake up, repeat the process. And I did this obsessively for a good 6 months. It's how I did the rest of my work throughout the years, but obsessively, like daily, trying to take on something new. Saying all that, I realize how insane that is. But think of like professional athletes and stuff. They go hard, and they go hard all day, and that's all their whole life is, just consumed with that. And so I guess that's just my avenue of how I want to pursue my passion. I am not a professional athlete. I'm a professional shadow worker. I don't know. But that's just what I enjoyed. It's what I obsessed over. It's what I wanted to do. It's what my path of curiosity was leading me down. Then I started getting into ideas of divination, really just tarot at first. Was like realizing if everything is a mirroring me, and these tarot cards have archetypal meanings to them, of like energies that are archetypal, big universal ones, and then just daily ones, or just emotion ones that show the process of our emotions, then I can use these as tools to also reflect what's going on within me, but from an archetypal point of view. So one that kind of goes beyond the individual human experience, and one that goes into this is a bigger bird's eye view perspective of what's going on in your life. This is something that you're going through. And so then I could go research that. So I was just in this phase of accumulating tools, resources, knowledge about myself and energy and how it all works. And so this was setting me up to then have more kind of mystical or spiritual experiences later on, because I was expanding my awareness of what could be. Life could be more than just a physical representation of everything going on. Like, there could be more going on beneath the surface. We can affect, if we are affected by energy, then we can also affect with our energy, which turns into manifestation and magic and things like that. Those are years away. I was not anywhere near embracing any of that yet. So this video went way longer than I meant it to. So I'm gonna finish chapter 1 here. This was, I guess, kind of an intro, like, this wasn't the intro to the series, but this is the intro to how I did everything that's going to be in this series, Diary of an Alchemist. In the next video, then we're going to start off with this story of the first time I met my inner child and that experience, which would also greatly affect how I did this work. So yeah, I don't even know where to go. I was going to tell that story at the end of this video, but this one got really, really long. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. I just like ran out of steam. So if you were here and if you're watching, thank you for watching. And if you have any comments, questions, if you have your own experiences that were similar or different, please put them in the comments below. My hope is with this series that it draws in people who are also wanting to do this work or are in the middle of doing that work. And I would love to build community around, I know this is the early stages, but I would love to build community around that. So if you see someone that has a question in the comments or has shared an experience, reach out to them and connect with them. Like this is a space for so many of us that feel lonely or feel like we're the only ones that we know, like we don't know anyone in real life who's going through similar things. I want to create community around people who want to understand the world in a deeper and different way, alternative way from the way that we've been doing it for generations. And so we create that not just by like you and I connecting in these videos, but also like connecting with each other and creating that sense of like, this is a safe space for us to feel what we feel without shame, without embarrassment, without guilt. So anyways, thank you for watching and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
When I think about yesterday, my oh my, my oh my.